Hello, hello, beautiful people, mi gente bella. Welcome to another edition of Santana Sis, where we talk about everything from roadblocks to relationships, everything in between, in the overall journey of a life. I am excited as always to bring you another edition of the show, and we do have another wonderful guest that is joining us. We go all the way back to like high
Way
school.
back.
Yes, like super before like professional world, before all these things.
When we were babies.
We were though, and we are gonna shout out all the incredible programs that exist. That really cool one, which does not, I don't even know the name of it.
The
one at the Science Center.
yeah.
What the heck was the name of that?
I think it was
program?
called Science Ambassadors.
Oh yeah, we were definitely
Yeah.
ambassadors, correct. We were at the Great Lakes Science Center here in Cleveland, Ohio, and we were doing really cool stuff young.
For sure.
Like we were learning leadership skills from the jump.
Yep.
But let me not take it away. Let me give you a chance. Introduce yourself. Who are you? What did you do? How we meet? Blah, blah, blah.
Okay. Well, I'm Elaine Suarez. I am a mom, a daughter, a friend. Melissa and I have known each other since we were babies, since we were in high school. We started in a youth program together, and we've both been in like similar work for all our careers. So we've
Pretty
always
much.
collaborated. I would describe myself as a workforce inclusion advocate, an equity and inclusion practitioner, an educator, and a career coach is kind of how I would sum up my experience.
Nice. Okay, and speaking of that, I was gonna say, so like we, as we mentioned, yes, it was an incredible program where we learned from the beginning how to like facilitate programs. So we were like mini facilitators back in the day, program coordinators, if you will, in that program. But I thought it was super cool and comforting because y'all know how nerve-wracking it is when you come in for an interview and you're like wondering, you know, how it's gonna go, what questions are you gonna be asked, and all those things. I thought it was so dope when I walked into Esperanza Inc. in Cleveland, and Miss Elaine was there, and so I was like, wait, you're here? And she was like, yes, I work here, girl. So I was like, oh, hold up, let me get the in. Like, are you gonna get me in? Like, can you put in a good word? So it was just awesome, but it's also like reassuring, like I said, that day to know that there was a familiar face.
Yeah.
But then we got to cross paths again. And actually, no, that's not the only time. We also crossed paths again in college because we were both the presidents of our little Latino organizations. Not little, but for us, you know what I mean? That was our little things. So yeah, it was crazy that we had multiple touch points
We've
over
kinda
the
like
years.
Our foundation, we started our foundation together.
Yes,
That's pretty
exactly. Absolutely. And so with that, I mean, so how do you feel like all of those things help set you up for like the career that you now have with all these great things that you now do?
Yeah, I mean, every experience I still use today. And the Science Center, so this was a program when we were high school kids, and we were coordinating STEM programs for younger kids, and we were going out into the community, like into like public housing centers, into community centers. We were bringing folks into the Science Museum. So that really like set a foundation for my interest in working with youth and in education. And I've really stayed like in that realm for the past over like 15 plus years. So yeah.
I know, I always thought it was interesting when people would say that, like they've had a career for like 20 years doing all this stuff. And I'm like, wow, that sounds a lot. We've been doing that now.
Yes, we really have.
Exactly. Now we're amongst those folks.
Yeah.
It is interesting, but that's awesome. And then what about like the Esperanza world and all those things that you did there?
Yeah, so I guess I can, let me backtrack. So I initially going into school, I wanted to be either like a teacher or a social worker. I always wanted to be in service of people, always wanted to make an impact. But those were really the only two career tracks that I knew that could do that.
Right.
My mother was a teacher in the Cleveland schools, and then just living between like Cleveland and Puerto Rico, just always lived in a very like multicultural world, but also always noticed like all of the disparities and injustices. So I was always like interested in working to alleviate that somehow. So I started in youth work. I interned at a community foundation when I was in graduate school, where we had a youth philanthropy program. And that was really cool because it empowered youth to decide like where they wanted to allocate different grant funds to youth serving programs. And then I came back to Cleveland. I did grad school out in Illinois, Northern Illinois University. Came back to Cleveland, actually was looking for some volunteering opportunities with Esperanza because I was a scholarship recipient, had always been connected to them. And there was an open position for a mentoring coordinator, so they were looking to launch a formal mentoring program. So that's how I ended up getting connected and employed at Esperanza. I was there for about 5 years. It really set my career off, and I was able to establish lots of connections, get lots of experience with program planning, workforce development. So I ran mentoring programs that were aimed at connecting students to like different career paths and opportunities. And then after that, I was at Cleveland State for 6 years where I was a career coach.
See, which is awesome. And so for those who don't know, yes, Esperanza Inc. is this wonderful nonprofit in Cleveland, and it is known for offering post-secondary opportunities for Latino students and also students of color as well. I remember being I had a great diverse group that was there, and actually y'all met 2 of them. So we had Aziz and Edward on the show. That's right. That's right. And we shouted out, and during that episode, we shouted out Elaine. So there's a person. Yes, we did. You have to go back. Here your shout out. Yes, we did, girl. So yeah, this is now the person we were talking about. But yeah, we did. I do think that's incredible. It is incredible work, and they just are celebrating their 40th anniversary of. Is it just of their existence or of the scholarship program?
Of the existence of the organization
and all the things. So they've been around for a minute, clearly. So definitely like one of the staples in our community. So it is great that like you were, and I think that's also again something that we don't consider enough, that sometimes even just aligning ourselves with organizations, whether it is through volunteer work, like there's so much value you can get with internship programs and all those things, but you looked up and then they actually happened to have an opening, and that opening led to so many other great things. So like with that mentoring program, I do remember it very well. There was such great, experience that you were able to gain that you could then take, to your other career ventures and all that. But how was the world of, Cleveland State and, once you moved into higher ed and all of those things, what was that like?
Yeah, honestly, I really loved being on the ground floor at Esperanza, like being in the community, with the community. So when I left the nonprofit sector, I always sought to maintain that connection. So at Cleveland State, I worked with all the students that were interested in social work, nonprofit, urban affairs, public policy, and that allowed me to work then with employers that were working in that space. Also, always kind of stayed close to the college programs that Esperanza had, and just being an extra layer of support at Cleveland State for students looking for like internships, career opportunities, just advice from someone that maybe had similar experiences to them. So I feel like my heart is always going to be like in the community with nonprofits and public-facing organizations, because I think that's where a lot of the work gets done, and then it really gets enhanced and elevated through partnerships across different sectors.
Absolutely. And that was also what was great. We when we had Marieli also as part of our Hispanic Heritage Theories that we are still doing. Oh, and I didn't even shout that out at the beginning. We're still in it, y'all. We are wrapping this with it. But of course, Hispanic Heritage Month does not end, nor do the conversations about Hispanic heritage end, which is this or anything else that we're doing. It gives us, of course, a great opportunity to have discussions about it. But of course, the work doesn't stop. And as you're mentioning, that's what we mean, though, is that they don't always necessarily get all of the attention that they necessarily deserve and all the funding that they probably deserve to be able to do the great things that they're doing, but they do offer such great, incredible opportunities. And like you said, they do it at the grassroots level. That is what's awesome, like that direct contact. And I agree. I actually remember being the most heartbroken leaving my Esperanza position and the babies. So shout out to all the babies from Saturday Academy and blah, blah, all them. But it was like tremendous connections that are hard to match, really. In any other, I haven't exactly had that exact same connection that I had there. In other ones. I've been able to help, I feel like, in other ways with other career ventures that I've taken on, but it doesn't match the exact same experience that, I had there.
Yeah, I think because it's, these spaces that are more at the grassroots are safe spaces for us, and they're culturally competent spaces for us. And when we move into other spaces that are sometimes predominantly white or in more of that corporate culture, it's just a very different feel, a different political skill that you need. So I got a big reality check once I left working at that grassroots level. Although I had some exposure, during my first internship, but moving into academia was just very different. And then now most recently, I'm at a unique organization where it's quasi-government, and has a corporate feel to it. So yeah, I think it really just depends on where you are, but we need to impact all of these spaces and make all of these spaces more accessible and more inclusive, because we belong to be there. We're talented, we have the skill set, we have the desire. So that's my whole mission and goal when it comes to like purpose for my work, is to create more access to career and education opportunities for folks that normally aren't given that chance or are often overlooked.
Absolutely. And we used to be them, you know what I mean? Yeah. So that's the thing. Yeah. So like, we have definitely seen what it's like. We also both went to PWI. So we went to predominantly white institutions. They were great ones. Yeah. I do remember Hiram very fondly. You went to Paul Wallace. Yep. Oh yes. So shout out to those. But did you see that? Like, did you see it? Like, were you able to see like a lot of the students of color? Like, what were their experiences like on campus? Were you able to help them a lot, have those real intense conversations, or did your position actually lend itself to that or not lend itself?
Do you mean in college?
Yeah, like when you were at CSU, but also, relating it back to your experience as well.
Yeah, but both. I would say at CSU, I kind of made it my own imperative to work with first generation college students and underrepresented groups, because there was a need for that, and students from different identities, different backgrounds, have different needs and different challenges and different barriers. Also, different cultural styles of communicating and relating. So I kind of self-designated myself as the DEI person within our career center. And that was actually able to really help me leverage my career into the DEI practice. So now I'm in a diversity, equity, inclusion program specialist role. So directly with that title and in that space. And a few years ago, I would have thought like those positions were unattainable. There's only one or two positions, and I'll never get that because I'm not formally trained in DEI, although I do it every day. But the work I did at CSU really positioned me to enter that field as a true practitioner.
Come on, see, that's awesome, and I agree. I definitely think that there's certain careers that definitely I agree. Like you don't immediately know what are the criteria for it and like what exactly you're preparing. But it's funny because speaking of that, when you said it, I was like, yeah, you definitely been doing DEI all the way back to when you were the president of the like Latino board. You know, so like the work definitely began way back when. And you actually reminded me going back to the Science Center. You're right. I forgot that we not only did work at the Science Center, but when we went to places like Friendly Inn and we were performing when we were doing those programs there. Agreed.
Garden
you
Valley,
are right. Yeah.
Like we went to a lot of
community agencies, and you're right, which to this day, as now as a school social worker, we still interact with a lot of them, but I totally had it. I was like, wow, that is right. We were already infiltrating those spaces back then. And so I do love that it was a perfect, setup for you. You know what I mean? A great, perfect prep to be able to do that. And so that is what I'm curious about. So like now that you are in this role, what does the world of diversity work look like now that you're in there, specialist, and like, what are you doing now with that?
Yeah, now that I'm on the other end, I still feel and very much act like an advocate, but now there's a bit more of the business lens to it. So really looking at, how do we work with the data that we have, with the resources that we have to implement, different interventions that can then lead to outcomes. So it's all about data and outcomes, I think in any and every industry, but even in DEI work. So looking at, if we're going to build talent pipelines of diverse candidates, what roles are we putting them into? Are they going to stay in the organization? Are they going to have opportunities to advance? So it's very complex, and there's lots of pieces. I think another piece that I'm learning is just like the political skill, interpersonal skill, relationship building piece to it that is really critical, because you want to build allies that will be supportive of your work and that can push the work forward. So I'm definitely getting more of that like higher level view of what it looks like from, I guess, from the decision makers and from that organizational level.
Oh, absolutely. And so that's awesome. So like, but has that been, is that the new thing for you then? Like having to look more at the data and all that? Or would you say that your other positions like set you up well for that part?
They did. They did set me up well. Even at, yeah, all the positions I've had have always been data driven, and I'm a very analytical person. Like I lead more with like relationship building and empathy, but I like to problem solve too. So I like to look at like what's the issue, and then what intervention can we put in place to get this outcome. So I'm really into like program planning and coming up with, this is the plan, this is how we're gonna do it, and this is what we hope to accomplish. So it's a good fit for me because I've been mostly in direct service for all my career. So like working directly with community members, with students, and now I get to do both, but a bit more of the organizational level work that it takes to create like that long term and larger progress.
Absolutely, which is what we need. So yeah, so being able to be a part of that, groundwork to be able to get that up and build that awareness and for others to know about that is amazing. And so speaking of that too, I know that you also got an opportunity recently to present to folks that were members. And so I believe was it open to everyone or the members of the 100 plus Latino list and
Yep,
all of that?
all of the members of
Okay.
100 plus Latinos. Yep.
So yes, for those who don't know, there is a 100 plus Latino list in Cleveland that was started by Marcia Moreno from Amor Consulting. So, it's a great new venture. Well, not even new anymore. It's been in a couple years now. It's still like, say, baby stages, and that was also something awesome that Elaine let me know about. So I actually was not aware of it when it first came out, but I definitely love that we're having more things like that because what's been awesome about it is once you're a part of it, it is just this beautiful new networking opportunity that you're now able to like be a part of. And it does offer you opportunities to join sessions like the one that Elaine did.
Yeah.
And so how was that? And like what all were you able to cover with folks during that?
Yeah. I love it. I'm a big like resume nerd. So I could talk about like resumes, LinkedIn stuff, networking for forever. And I think it's because like I've always struggled with these things so much, and no one teaches you. This is all like hidden information.
Yeah.
No one teaches you how to build your resume, how to network, the importance of following up. How to identify careers or organizations that are a good fit for you. So I think that's what makes me so passionate about it, that I've struggled through that process, and I've seen so many other people struggle through it, and it can be just very like emotionally taxing because we spend most of our time at work, right? So we want to find a work experience that isn't going to be soul sucking at minimum, and at maximum that is something that can be you can find purpose in, that you can support yourself and your family through, and that is a good investment of your time and resources. So yeah, that's a long way to say that I talked about career development and how to really position yourself through like your resume, through your bio, and talking about your strengths and assets rather than thinking, oh, well, I don't check all these boxes, or I'm missing these one or two critical pieces. So kind of reframing it as to, well, what can you offer? What makes you that unique person? And what are your unique skills, talents, and gifts?
See, and I do think that's awesome because that isn't something that everybody considers. And I think that that's a conversation that I've been having starting at the ground level with the high schoolers that I'm with, just having them. And I always said that always pains me when they're not able to articulate their strengths or not realize the skills that they do have and the practical skills that they have or like ways that they can, infiltrate those spaces. But I'm sure you've seen it. So like having to be somebody who's giving career advice, I'm sure there are folks that do either doubt their abilities, don't feel that they have that necessary experience, or don't realize the multitude of opportunities that are before them that they can. And so like, have you seen that, or like how have those conversations been? How have you been able to help people understand that?
Oh yeah, I mean it's everywhere. That self-doubt, that imposter syndrome. It's imposed on us too externally. So as people of color, we get all these messages and look at who do we see in leadership? What messages do we get from media? So there's fair reason why we battle this imposter syndrome and this self-doubt. And we're also sometimes like blatantly experience, you know, that discrimination or that like being put down in the workplace and in school. So it's a lot of like an uphill battle against all these external forces. So yeah, I always take the mindset that it's never too early to start your career development. It's never too late either. So there's always like a new skill that you can pick up. There's always a new connection that you can make. And everyone has leadership capabilities. I truly believe that everyone has unique talents and gifts. It's just really like identifying those and then matching them up to something that could be a good fit for you. So I would say like 90% of folks, including myself, battle with that, especially people of color.
Oh yeah, definitely. And if a person, so to give us a preview, so like if a person was wanting to showcase more of their strengths and all that, like what are some tips, for example, that you offer them that like can help them showcase themselves better if they're feeling like, well, I don't really have a lot that I have on mine. Like if you could give them a few, like what are some tips you would give them?
Yeah, I can think of a couple. One thing that I really like I'm a psych major, so I really love assessments, like personality assessments. And there's a few good free ones out there as well, but I really like the Strengths Finder assessment, Clifton Strengths Finder.
Yes.
Have you ever done that?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's been a while though.
Yeah. So that one leans more on your strengths, and it helps you identify like what are those areas where you're really strong in and how can you leverage them. So I'm trying to think of an example of one of mine. I think one of mine is like love for learning. It's termed something else, but like always seeking knowledge and truth and a love for learning. And how that's impacted me is that, again, like I can tend to be very analytical, but I can present a program plan backed with data, backed with rationale that then makes sense to move forward on. So it kind of facilitates it for the decision makers. So that's helped me, and always kind of just staying on top of trends, whether in higher ed, workforce, or DEI. That's an example. Another example, I would say, I think it's either StrengthsFinder or another assessment that I love, which is called, it's a values assessment. It's called VIA Values Assessment. Values are really critical too. So I would say getting clear on what are your work values. So do you enjoy being a people person and being really collaborative? Are you really driven and motivated by earning a certain income level? Are you really good with data and information? So finding out like what are those interests and values, what you're looking for in that workplace and in your day-to-day experience. So assessments. Another one I would say is doing some mindfulness practices, so journaling, so taking some time to answer, thinking about some reflection questions. How would your past colleagues, supervisors, friends, family, how would they describe you? What are some things that they would say about how you show up in the family or at work? And then that's another piece too. So don't just think about what you've done for work. You are a whole person and you have experiences outside of work. So, you know, how have you shown up for your family? How have you shown up in the community? Are there other passion projects that you're involved with, or organizations, or volunteering? So you can pull from any and every experience that you've had to start building up those strengths. And then last, I would say, talk to someone. So there's lots of free resources if you're a current student working with your career center. If you're a community member, the library systems have really great free job coaching resources. But having a coach, I think, helps build that confidence in you and helps uncover some of the strengths that you might not see right away.
Oh, yes. I love everything about that, because I do think those are some of the things that I feel like people would think don't always have space on the resume. Like, why would I put that? Or like, I need to stick to just whatever job I had, and specifically, how does this relate to the other position? But it's like, actually not. Like, that is a great thing to bring out. And you need to be able to like capitalize on that and really showcase yourself authentically but holistically. And so sometimes I feel like we miss that. We're thinking that that's not necessarily something that speaks well. But even like telling kids, like, back when you used to babysit, like, kids trusting you don't mean to be able to do that is an awesome skill that you had. If you are the oldest in your family and you've been used to having to take care of all them siblings, that's a big skill. You know what I mean? And so like, I'm sure that you're always the person that probably takes on that, project first. That's no accident. You know what I mean? That's just who you are and like the kind of, skills that you bring to the table. So I agree that like, we need to be able to like definitely not count that out and not count, like you said, all those connections out, those experiences out, but definitely gaining experience from leadership. And so I love hearing that, like you said, a job coach, but also like, and if you're a person that's considering a business coaches are great too. Yes. Please do it. And so like, definitely consult that if you can.
That's a great point. There's no like one answer. There's no one path, no one direction. We were just talking about this, that like, we've been fed this notion that the track is college, career, and then you have this amazing like American dream life. But as many of us know, like that's not reality. Right. So we kind of have to create our own spaces and our own paths, and that looks different for everyone.
Oh yeah, and it's okay that it does. And so like, and people are definitely pursuing great like lucrative opportunities, and it's not the traditional way to do it. So like, we don't always have to follow that traditional path to get to that. And like, success is clearly being redefined every day. Yes. I would definitely say that I'm even learning, like I don't have to, and I'm even like, I also agree that not only was I, ingrained to believe that, but also the grind. And like, yes. You can, hear about the grind and you're participating in it, but goodness gracious, it needs to be fueled, like you said, with passion. Like I feel like it needs to be that you're grinding, not just working for other people, but I feel like you better be grinding for you. Like I'd rather be doing that for yourself, that you're working hard, that you're actually like gaining things that are going to help you ultimately, but that you're not doing it to please others. Because that is something that I feel like we've also been able to see, in fortunate ways and other unfortunate ones. Yeah. But we have seen a lot like from the nonprofit world. We both actually have participated in higher ed in different ways as students, but as professionals. And so like, we've definitely been able to see all of that. And I'm now like part of other agencies, but as we know, like definitely ultimately, I think that's why, that's always why I love when people have said that you gotta like align yourself with a passion and not with an employer, because it's like,
yes,
you know what I'm saying? Like you definitely, that employer and all that, those things will continue to, be where they are. But as long as you are aligned with your passion and you know where you want to go, then you'll be able to take that anywhere, really.
One of my colleagues recently said the work is bigger than the four walls that we're in. And that like really stuck with me, because it can be really exhausting work, and it can be disheartening too when you're dealing like with these big systemic things that sometimes it feels like you're not, like, what am I doing? Am I actually making an impact? But we are collectively, and the work is bigger than the organization, that you're at, or the project that you're working on, or the program that you're putting in place. It's part of like these larger efforts to create change.
Let's go. And the thing is too, I want to also speak to those that have work guilt. We're talking to you because like, I know that I've also been at places where I feel like I've stayed longer than I needed to because I felt like I owed the organization something, that like my work was not done. I'm going to be honest with you. There's never going to be a perfect time. Yes. If you feel yourself being called to something else, don't let yourself be pressured out of a situation either, because I have also responded to calls thinking that like I needed to be there. It wasn't necessarily me making the call though. Someone else was doing it. And I just thought like, oh, I really want to respond to this. And I need to say yes to everything. We don't need to say yes to every single opportunity, y'all. You can say no.
Yes, don't say yes.
No. Yeah, not every darn time.
Right.
And don't feel like you owe anybody anything. No, you don't. You know what I mean? You owe yourself whatever it is that you want to do, and you know yourself better than anyone. And actually, if you don't, Elaine offered some amazing assessments that can help with that. Because honestly, I was like, I need to bust those back out, because I honestly know that some of my strengths have definitely changed. Mm-hmm. The last time I took it was when I had my first job.
Oh, wow.
That's why I was like, I know I need it. Yeah, exactly. Like some things have changed, and I love the values one, because it is true though. I definitely feel like we need to be in spaces that align with our values, but that we also need to live a life that is aligned with our values. And so like, sometimes it's hard to get away from it. It's very easy to get derailed from that, especially in our society. I mean, because like you said, there is a lot going on and there is a lot of pressure, and we're always hearing different narratives being thrown. And that's what I was curious about too, because like you said, we all have our stories. You sprinkled it in there at the beginning, but I definitely want to go back. You are Puerto Rican. And so like, and you were born there, correct? You weren't even, yeah. So you like came over here. I'm wondering what was life like for you before you became the professional, all of that, like, and like you said, you got hip to the corruption. For me, I got hip to it as an adult, like in college. I'm sure you probably got to see more things firsthand and all that, but what was life for you back then before all this?
Yeah, I think that feeling of living in multiple worlds but not belonging to any. So there's like a saying, ni de aquí ni de allá. So I'm not from here and I'm not from there. I don't fully belong in either space. And I've heard it recently actually reframed. Soy de aquí y de allá. So I'm from here and from there. And I'm going to start using that because that's how I feel it at this point in life.
I love that.
But yeah, I came over in the early 90s. I was a young child. I think I was like around my son's age, actually, like 7 or 8. And when I got to Cleveland, busing was still taking place. So my family settled in like the Clark Fulton neighborhood, which is an area that is a really high Latino population in Cleveland. I think it's like 40% maybe.
Yeah,
something
pretty
like
sure.
So that's where we first settled. And I remember taking the bus, the yellow school bus from like the West 25th area to the east side. So always had been like in the Cleveland schools. Always grew up in a really like multicultural environment, like as far as like my peers and students. I mean, the students that I went to school with. But then I also was always really connected to Puerto Rico. So we were kind of, a unique family here in Cleveland in that I feel like a lot of Latinos kind of travel in groups, right? So it's like one person from the family comes and then the tia comes, everybody else comes.
We all coming now.
But we were by ourselves. It was just my family. So it was my immediate family. Myself, my younger brother, my mother, and my father. So we didn't have much family here. That was always a struggle too, and kind of like if you're a Latina woman, you might resonate with like the overprotectiveness and some of the standards that are placed upon us. So that kind of coupled with not having family here, it sometimes did feel isolating. And then I always traveled back and forth to Puerto Rico. So I would spend my summers there. And all my family was there. So I do really feel like I grew up in both places and have always, even as an adult, now that I'm an adult, I'm not like forced to go to Puerto Rico like I used to be with my parents back in the day, but I really make it a point to be there at least once a year and check in on my grandparents and just be home and have that feeling of like being home. Like I just think it's a different feeling. And then just noticing like the differences between inner city Cleveland. There's so many struggles and challenges. And in Puerto Rico too. And for me, it feels like two very different countries. Although Puerto Rico is part of the U.S., it feels like a whole nother country, a whole nother culture to me. Always kind of like balancing those two worlds.
Oh my gosh, yes. I was definitely thinking that. And it's, man, and so like, and I love that there is intentionality now, like to do it. But I agree. I remember being hauled off on my little trips when I was younger. Yeah. Of course, my mom was going to go. And I'm not saying I disliked them. It's just that I didn't get to do as much that I would want to do. Yeah. That's what it was. So
you're
it's not
like just like visiting family.
Pretty much, y'all. We was at Abuelita's house the whole time. I was like, yo, a little boring, y'all. Real pretty, but it's boring. Right, so like, that was the only thing. But it is a gorgeous place. And I'm not going to lie. And what I also loved about what you said is the home piece. So like, I agree. And even me, I was not born in Puerto Rico. I was born here. So like, I was born in Cleveland. And my mom was the result of the mass migration that Elaine just spoke about. It was her brothers first. They all came. They all sent, this messages back home. She got the message. There was jobs here, y'all. Come through. She came through and did all that. So I was born here. My brother was also born here in Chicago. And so like Chicago also, of course, has a very rich Puerto Rican and Latino in general, like populations and all that. They also have really interesting, like, girls, you know what I mean, in places like kind of like New York. I've always called Chicago the more affordable New York, but that's just me because I'm like, gives me New York vibes, but it is more affordable than New York in some ways, depending where you are and all those things. But I agree with that, because even as a person born here, and that's something that we cannot, I feel like, echo enough, is that I don't like when we're discredited for like how Latino you are and like
Yes.
all these things. Cause it's like, I wasn't born there, y'all, but as soon as I get there, as soon as I get off that plane, I smell that air, I feel that home. You know, I just
Yes.
feel like it's unlike any other place.
Our
It
roots are
is.
there.
Absolutely. And so I just feel like I also love shout out to Young Latino Network, and hopefully eventually we can have Selena on. We've also shouted you out a couple times, Selena. So if you're listening, but like reclaiming, I love that they actually made
Yes.
a message recently about reclaiming Hispanic Heritage Month. You know, we've also been having a lot of conversations about what does it need to look like and how can we use it. But reclaiming that, y'all, and just reclaiming yourself. I feel like reclaiming your identity, your roots, what those are, and what those mean to you, but also acknowledging your ancestral roots in the process. So, like, we do come from places. Like, we don't just exist now and here. You know, we should care a lot about our present and, you know, where we are and where we're gonna go. But like knowing where we came from, and that, you know, and speaking of foundations, like the things that shaped us and like made us, you know, the people we are. And so for us, yes, I am also a very fellow proud Puerto Rican, and I do love it, and I agree. It is its own separate place. And even with the only thing that's been heartbreaking for me is seeing that there has been American influence on it.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's not been easy thing to like go back and see, and it becomes a little bit stronger every time I've gone back. I'm like, oh great, like the little stores that I remember seeing are being replaced by things. So that part can be hard, but just like you said, it's also, I think, hard when you are navigating in different spaces and how you feel, like those different identities that come with it. So yeah, definitely. So I appreciate it. I definitely appreciate that you shared that and like what it's been. But then like, so with that, do you feel like that also has influence to this day, like how you advocate and like how you show up in different spaces, or like how has that still influenced you?
Definitely. I mean, I think just being exposed to, just growing up again, like in a really multicultural environment. There's a term in like the DEI world, cultural competency. Like I feel like I've grown up in cultural competency, like from birth, just by being in these very like multicultural spaces. So I very, I'm aware of different identities and different groups and different challenges, and that, you know, people are unique even within the Latino culture. We're so diverse, within ourselves and even in ideology too, and like how we look
Pretty
at some of
much.
these things.
That's very true.
So yeah, it's really shaped my approach to anything and everything. I'll even say, being, you know, being a first generation, being an immigrant, I can, I, especially when I was working with college students, working particularly like with international students, I feel like I was able to empathize with some of those challenges of being, you know, a bilingual person, maybe not having English as your first language, having different visible like cultural differences. And those are some things that I think sometimes mainstream America can be really harsh on, like not give any leeway or grace. Yet when we go to another country, we expect everything to be in English and everything to cater to us. So I can definitely see it in that space. And then just being able to work with lots of different folks. I think allyship is another thing I'm really interested in. Like I'm very much a advocate for the Latino community, but really for all minoritized communities and folks. And that's another piece. And like when I think there's mechanisms that try to tear us apart, right, and try to create conflict amongst us. And it's so deep and so complex. It's even within like amongst Latinos, amongst Black and Brown folks, amongst AAPI and like it's very complex. It can be very what's the word, sinister, I think. So we need to come back to like all working together and creating those partnerships and allyships so that we can all move collectively to fight against those systems, the white supremacy that really impacts all of us. So I just think there's so many pieces to it, and it's very complicated. And when I see it like very oversimplified and politicized, it really bothers me.
Absolutely.
Because people don't see the full picture and they don't want to see the full picture. They don't want to try to make an attempt to understand. So.
Oh, yes. And I appreciate, too, the added extra layer because we also, yes, I love that allyship has been a continued theme that y'all been hearing in this series because, you know, Mariela and I as well. But, like, but I also love the added layer that you said, even like AAPI. So agreed. Like Asian as well. Like just all the different, there's so many myriad, right, of populations that exist. And in America, you're going to see it, you know, especially here. And so that definitely happens. But I think what's interesting too is that, and that's what we mean, right? Like the fact that we still have Black History Month, we have Hispanic Heritage Month, we have an AAPI month, Asian and specific, Asian American and Pacific Islander month. I mean, that's what we're seeing. Like the fact that we still need those, that's already, you know, saying that we still need to have more conversations, that it's still not permeated in that way. But it also doesn't mean that that's an excuse for okay, so during AAPI month, all the Latinos, you stay silent, let them do their thing. During Black History Month, we don't go there, we don't infiltrate, we stay over here. That's not what it's supposed to do. Like it's supposed to amplify all of the conversations and all of the efforts, and we really should be coming together all the time. And I love that when I was in college, I was very much a member of the African American Student Union, and I had OLA because, yes, I did want to also have events that were like Latino in nature, but we would go to each other's meetings. Yes. We would go to each other's meetings, promote each other's events, and like we did that to join each other. So yeah, we had a lot of the same members sometimes. We would promote a lot of the awareness because we were still at the same college, still trying to do the same things, still trying to be there for each other, still trying to create safe spaces, increase awareness, but then do all these things. And so I agree with you. I think like that is absolutely missed. And then I also love what you said about like, there's diversity within Latinos too. If we really gonna break it down, y'all, there is no one size fits all Latino. Like there's no such thing. Like you're not gonna see that demographically, you're not going to see it physically. Like there's just so many ways. And I agree with you that ideologically as well. Based on our own experiences, of course, we're going to look at it. And of course, we're going to take certain things, we're going to base it on, because of course, a lot of knowledge we build, it is based on research and data, hopefully, right? Because we have that available to us. But I mean, anecdotally too, let's be honest. We're going to relate it back to the experience I had. But for me, in my family, this is what happened. And so like, and I get that. But I think too, like if we are going to come together and, you know, really see it, we need to see where that commonality struggle is and like where we can all rise up together so that we all can gain more benefits because we're all navigating it anyway. So we can get out there. So.
Yeah, it's a balance between, because I see both. I think it's, I like the term BIPOC and POC, so Black, Indigenous, people of color. And I also like acknowledging our respective individual identities. I think it needs to be both, and it needs to be both like a strong effort of both, because I think the coalition building is so critical, because if you put people of color together, we are the people of the global majority. That's another reason I hate the term minority. And I'm taking a course, and I just learned this from my professor, to start using the term minoritized, because although we may not be minorities in terms of numbers, we've been minoritized in that we don't have access to the same spaces and levels of influence that you know, the dominant culture, white male dominated leadership positions have.
Yes, that's right. And changing it to more of like the action that's been happening. I love that too when it comes to also thinking about enslaved person versus like a slave. No, we're not a slave. We're not going to take that on as an identity, but it was an enslaved person because it is something that occurred to them versus who they are. I love that. So like, I love like reframe. And then, I mean, I think, you know, speaking like you said, since you're also a psych fan and we're both, you know, psychology fans, I mean, it's all about the reframing, because definitely if you feel like that is only who you are and that you are set up to fail and, you know, all those things, then that is what you will begin to internalize. And that's where the self-doubt will continue to grow, because you feel like you are not meant to have any of these other great things, or like, you know, that you don't deserve success or whatever, or achievements, or just any, you know, progression in general. So I feel like, yes, it's always going to be very important to reframe that, to know that, to get in touch with that, and to really take active steps against that, since it can become so ingrained. But you also said that there were some standards, you know, that you also grew up hearing, you know, as a Latina and all that, like, you know, that dichotomy as well. And so what was it like having to fight against like those things as well? And like, how do you feel like you've grown from, you know, what once was pressure in that way?
I think like the two biggest things that come to mind that are sometimes problematic in our culture is first and foremost the colorism. I think that's just so rampant and so so damaging, right? And I think your last guest talked about this too.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And I love what she said. Something like, we can't run away from it anymore. That saying of "Dónde está tu abuela?" Y mira dónde está tu abuela. And yeah, I have family members that are Afro-Latino, but they will not say they're, they would say, oh, my grandma had blue eyes and blonde hair. And so it's just very rampant and troubling in our society. And then like on the other end, when you get to the United States, here everything is seen in black and white. So there's almost like no space for brown. We don't fit in any of those boxes. I consider myself multiracial, indigenous, Black, European ancestry. I'm not gonna check the white box, but we're being called to check that white box to increase the number of I don't know if I can get this political on your thing. Is that okay? I feel like now the real stuff is coming.
Yeah, it is though. We unraveled, bro. We got there.
So yeah, we're being almost. And this was from a racial equity training that I did. I remember this term, how they were explaining that Latinos are being invited, called into being a part of the white population. And that's happening. So the colorism, I think, feeds into that. It feeds into our beauty standards. It feeds into some of the conflict that we have with our, within Black and brown communities, and not even so much the conflict, just like the missed opportunity in coalition building. So colorism. The other one I will say are some of the misogynistic traits and ideologies that we carry within us. So, Amen. I grew up in my grandparents have a very traditional family marriage, very strongly defined gender roles. That doesn't work in the United States in 2023 anymore. It's not reality, right? And not only that, like in terms of work and how you show up for like yourself and your family, but just like the worth that you have for yourself, and how I know you talk about a lot about like relationships, like how you approach your worth in relationships, how, like that's seen as like the golden ticket is to become a wife and mother, and those are amazing things, but it doesn't always pan out that way, and everyone's path looks different, and you can still be an amazing person if you're not married, right?
Hey, let's go. Yes, amen.
And if you're a single mother out here,
you getting it, bro.
Yeah, so I just think there's multiple paths, and we're kind of fed that those messages from an early age, that this is how women should show up. We should be self-sacrificing. We should do everything and anything for our family, for our men.
Right.
And I think that's harmful.
Yeah. Well, but exactly. Only because, because of course, like you just said, for those who, participate in that and build those beautiful families, by all means, of course, we're saying that there's so much value to that, but there's so many other things that you can exercise and take part in, and that doesn't make you any less of a person. That's all we are saying, though. But agreed, because growing up and hearing that is hard to live with, to think that that's all you can aspire to, and that, and here's the main thing, like you just mentioned, and that's why I'm glad we're bringing it up, is that, and so what if I don't do that? Does that make me inadequate? That's the problem, because when you grow up with the pressure of like, okay, so wait, if I am making it in my career, but I don't have a man, so now I'm not okay, like that I'm not successful then? Like, why is that the question? Or like, if you show up to the family gathering and you want to talk about this cool project that you did, but you don't have a fiance, like, you know what I mean? Like, so then I'm not allowed to be here? Like, does that, because you can have other things that you care about as well. And maybe those other things will come, whatever. But again, that you still matter. You still have like these great contributions. They don't have to look domesticated in that way. That's all we're saying. And that you can challenge that. I do love that. And I do think that we do need to have more conversations about that. And since it did get brought up, I will say that I definitely do think that I've seen it. I mean, I've seen it even back in undergrad. So like even in college, seeing how I do feel like I also saw some Latinos voluntarily participating in the white, exercising the white spaces. But I also agree that there is an invitation. I agree. It is there only because, and it happened with other populations as well. It happened with Italians,
Yes.
obviously. Now, how are Italians and Irish people white? I mean, there was an invitation made. There was a table that was there. They were invited to come to it. And now it's something that we just talk about like it's always been that way. It's like it's insane to think about, but like, no, they weren't. These people were people that were discriminated against that are now just white. Like Latinos, we're not from that, but we are seeing it. Like it's interesting to navigate it, but it's interesting for Latinos though, because like you said, there is Afro-Latinidad. And so we do still have African ancestry. There's gonna be certain Latinos that even when invited, not all of them are going to be able to do it. And so that's why you're seeing the division happen. And so like, fine, like, well, I'm going to go ahead and take my ticket. I'm going to the table, but I can't join you. So like, what do I do now? Like, what does that look like for me? And like, where should I go? So I agree. It's interesting waters that we are now navigating.
Yeah.
But I think that I just would love for us to see that regardless of whatever space we are occupying and wherever we are, that we don't deny the heritage that we have, and that whenever it is, whether it's during Hispanic Heritage Month or any other month of the year, that we are so proud, to have that, and that like, I don't want us to feel that it's better, even though that sometimes that's a message we get, that it's better to abandon that identity in order to gain success. That's the messaging I hope we don't get. So yeah. Man. And so with that, ma'am, like, right, I was like, we got to take a pause on that one.
That's a lot,
but with that being said, like, what kind of work do you hope to also do in the future with the DEI and all this stuff? Like, what's on the horizon for you?
Okay. I want to continue to grow in my field and have a greater impact. Really trying to bring folks into spaces where they've been traditionally underrepresented.
Absolutely.
I, again, like really have a love and appreciation for grassroots work and community organization. So I would love to get more involved in board service. So on the other end of, maybe serving on the board of a nonprofit, volunteering more in the community. And then I also really enjoy creating content around career development topics where there's not as much content. So like, for example, earlier, how we were talking about the resumes and strengths, like just reframing some of these conversations that normally take place. Like, here's how you set up your resume, A, B, C. Yes, but let's consider these other aspects, and let's be creative, and let's talk about different strategies and applicant tracking systems and networking and following up, and like all these things that you're not just gonna get from like one article on Indeed.com.
Yeah, you're right now. Agreed. Yeah, that there's space for that. Okay, well, awesome. I definitely think, those are great goals. And I do know that there's different people that listen, including board presidents. So that's interesting that you mentioned board. Hopefully that could become a reality soon. Hey, make that happen. But agreed, because I definitely think to amplify the voice, you know what I mean? And so like, and I think that's also so cool to even hear that, knowing that we go way back to like high schoolers. I don't think I would have ever been thinking about sitting on a board or, you know what I mean? Like, thinking about that. Yeah. Back in the day, we were part of like we were part of governing bodies, like our student councils and our things there. But now to be thinking that like, oh, maybe we should be joining more of that. Shout out to Rosa Cruz. She just also became part of the Hispanic Roundtable. So shout out to you, girl. Another awesome. Latina. Yes. I saw it yesterday, girl. So hey. But that is cool. You're right. And then knowing that we deserve to, and we should, let's do it. Like add our voice to the conversation, that we can add that richness, make it richer, that we're coming generationally, that we're adding diversity from that way, you know what I mean, in these different perspectives, that you're now seeing the students and also the children who came straight from Puerto Rico that are now here, what that's been looking like, and like now what services are better, like that we're able to talk about what they look like. And so I love knowing that those are the things that you're going to be doing there. And for anybody else who may be considering like going into DEI, that fields, or like any of the fields that you mentioned, or want some career help, is there any advice you would give to them?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going internally first. So doing a lot of that self-reflection, getting really clear on what your values are, what's important to you, what you're looking for that's going to be fulfilling and match that purpose. But then going externally too. So networking, relationship building, connecting with folks that are in positions or organizations that you want to be in. A lot of folks are eager and willing to talk to you. You just have to ask. And that's something I've learned along the way as well. And then just, I mean, we have the internet, right? Like everything at the touch of our phones, and so using your resources again. There's lots of like free content out there, ways to like learn new skills. Like even on YouTube, you can really up some of your technical skills, your Excel, or if you want to design websites or get into marketing. So we have access to so much information where it's like we don't need those four walls anymore of the traditional classroom or certifications. We can really create our own path.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And we don't have to just do it from there. You know, there are other ways to do it. And don't think that, and like we mentioned, that anything is unattainable. There probably is a way to be able to get there. I think it's harder not knowing what it is that you want to attain. That's a little harder because, of course, that's not a question that anybody can answer for you except you. But if you know it, and it's just simply a matter of how to get there, I'm pretty sure we can figure it out.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'm pretty sure we can form that path, help you on there, and, be able to do it. So, yes, I hope that you do take advantage of that, whether it's free coursework, whatever. But, and like you said, even just informal, practices and just setting up those relationships, like you mentioned, with folks that are in those spaces and can help you with it and really just give you that real perspective of like what it's like there, how to navigate and all those things.
And try different things. That's another piece is like you might not, you don't know where you're going to end up or you don't know what you don't know. So trying things that maybe are outside of your comfort zone, this is outside of my comfort zone. Melissa knows that.
Being on podcast.
That I very much don't like the spotlight, but you have to push. Nothing grows unless you're outside of your comfort zone. So you have to push yourself to experience new things, to meet new folks, to try new ventures, and that's the only way you'll really grow and discover the path that's for you.
Yes, absolutely. And so y'all heard it. So that's a good way to be able to wrap, at least for now. There's so many other things, of course, we could like talk about and delve into, but we'll save those for y'all. But if folks want to connect with you or learn more about you or like what you're doing organizationally or what have you, is there a way for them to reach out?
Yeah, you can look me up on LinkedIn. It's Elaine Suarez, or connect with me via email. It's esuarezrodriguez1@gmail.com.
Hey. So y'all heard it. Definitely LinkedIn is good. Yo, LinkedIn is like blowing up now. It's a little.
I love LinkedIn.
Yes, it is good. It has a little Facebook vibes, a little bit. With some of the things they've been changing it, y'all. But it's a great space. It is a great space.
I could do a whole episode on LinkedIn.
Oh, see, okay, so we'll be back for LinkedIn. That'll be part 2. We'll let y'all know about that. And if y'all want it, let us know, right? Like, let us know that that's something that you're interested in. We could definitely make sure that we address it. And because I am learning more about it. So you're right. It would be great to educate more on that topic. But y'all heard it. Please feel free to connect. Of course, with the show as well. Like, always look us up, Santana Says, everywhere, audio-wise, but also YouTube. Wherever you get your favorite podcast, make sure y'all continue to tune in. But as always, we appreciate you. Appreciate you also for coming on.
Thank you.
Stepping outside your comfort zone, y'all.
Yes.
Pushed it. She did it.
I did it.
But
I showed up.
Yes, exactly. I know, right? You could have stood me up. I'd have been sorry, y'all. Just sitting here waiting.
I would never.
No. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
And definitely, y'all, thank you always for tuning in, supporting, and anything else we can do. Any other feedback, let us know. But I hope you enjoy your Feel Good Friday and join us on another one so we can do it all over again. Thank you.